مارغريت الساير والدكتور هلال الساير.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to share with you a very emotional story about a young boy, 4 years old, who inspired us to build the state-of-the-art a hospice called Bayt Abdullah.
Good morning to you too. Hilal and I met when we were students a long time ago. And although we followed different careers, we remained friends and eventually got married. And as you already know, we have 4 children and 6 beautiful grandchildren. That's how it worked out for us. Unfortunately, it's not always the way. And some children are born with conditions that may threaten their lives. And they may spend many years undergoing treatment until they're finally cured. But the experience of a life-threatening condition can often result in a childhood that is scarred by the disease itself and by the diagnostic techniques and treatments that they have to go through. And still others, in spite of the best efforts possible, their treatment may fail and they are robbed of their childhood.
The death of a child has always been acknowledged as the greatest tragedy that happens to a family. The terrible phrase is you cannot,
nothing
more can be done for this child, was said to a young woman, Kuwaiti woman, by the doctors in London when the treatment failed, to a young boy called Abdullah. Abdullah, when he was 18 months old, he was diagnosed neuroblastoma, a malignant disease that is very painful. He was operated in Kuwait and then sent to London for further treatment. After 3 years, the doctor told the mother that the treatment failed and that there's more to be done for this child. He advised her to go to Kuwait to share and to be supported by the family.
However, there was much more that could be done for Abdullah. In 1989, Hilal, myself, and some friends got together and founded the Kuwait Association for the Care of Children in Hospital. Many of you may know of it as KACCH. And its purpose was to provide psychosocial care to children and their families in hospital. This initiative had resulted from the experience we had when our youngest son, Tariq, he's now in his 30s, he was about 8 at the time, was admitted to the Amiri Hospital in Kuwait with an acute asthmatic attack. The medical treatment was excellent, and he soon got better, but the pediatric ward was bare, lots of stainless steel, white walls, and was very scary for a lot of the children. So when Tariq was better, I asked the head of pediatrics if I could collect some friends and we'd go in and paint the hospital, the pediatric ward, and organise play activities for the children. And we went to the Minister of Health at the time and asked him to support the work we were doing by bringing in experts from the UK who would teach us how to respond to the special needs that we were observing in the children in the hospital. And we learned from the experts that hospitals can be dangerous places for children, taken away from everything that's familiar to them, their homes, their family, their friends, and sometimes even their parents. children in hospital often feel confused and frightened, in pain, and sometimes psychologically traumatized. But we learned that there was a profession called Child Life that trained child life specialists to give psychosocial support to the children in hospital using play, the international language of children, to help them understand why they were in hospital, what their treatment would be like, and how they might feel.
Jim Q. Kendall, a clinical psychologist, was one of the experts that was brought into Kuwait. He gave a series of lectures. One of them was called Children's Perception for Death and Dying. We advertised this in the local press, and the lecture theater was full to capacity. There was the mother who I was talking to in the theater and asking frequent questions. At the end of the lecture, she came to me and Margaret and said, I promised my child that he'll never be admitted to hospital again. Can you help me to make this promise, to keep this promise? So I put together a team of experts, myself, the chairman of pediatrics, Margaret, and then we had a young doctor who just graduated from MD Anderson, especially expert in what Abdullah had. So we went together with Abdullah's mom to his home, and we started treating this child and treated his symptoms. When the child was free of pain, he became like any other child. He wanted to play, he went to his cousins, celebrated Girgi'an, celebrated Eid. He used to come very often to our house and became very close to us. He used to play with my children. Some of the weekends he would come to the chalet and play with our children again. This went on for 6 to 7 months, and slowly Abdullah started getting weaker and weaker. We once had the first anniversary of KACCH in the Amiri Hospital in the car park, and Abdullah came and celebrated with us. We had 1,000 children in the car park, all holding balloons, and we gave Abdullah the balloon as well. And they had to release the balloons when they sang We Are the World. So when they sang, they all released the balloon, and we looked at Abdullah. He still was hanging on to his balloon. So we said, why don't you leave your balloons? He said, no, this is my balloon. I said, okay. Anyway, 2 weeks after that, Abdullah came to our house to play again. And at the end of the day, he hugged and kissed every one of us goodbye. And he asked if my eldest son Khalid would go home with him and read him a bedtime story. Khalid went home with him and read him a bedtime story. That very night, Abdullah died in his mother's arm, peacefully, not in pain, surrounded by his family. Abdullah's mother kept her promise.
On the 2nd of August 1990, Kuwait was invaded by Iraq. We were on holiday in Scotland at the time, and it was 2 years before I returned to Kuwait, and another 2 years before we re-established KACCH. When we returned, we concentrated on developing a 1-year postgraduate course at Kuwait University in child life, so that we could graduate our own child life specialists who could then expand the program of psychosocial support into all of the other hospitals in Kuwait, at least into some of them. And it was then that we discovered that other children who had conditions similar to Abdullah were not given the same support that we'd been able to give to him. And so we became determined that we were going to provide that care for all children in Kuwait with life-limiting and life-threatening conditions. And we continued to learn from the experts that were still coming into Kuwait. And we learned that the care that we had given Abdullah had a name. It was pediatric palliative care. This was in the early 1990s. And palliative care was still a very, very new specialty. And pediatric palliative care was even newer. So very few people knew about it. But we had been able to offer that support and give that support to Abdullah without knowing what it was. And we discovered that pediatric palliative care involves giving total holistic care to children with life-limiting and life-threatening conditions and their families. And we learned about children's hospices, places that were specifically built and designed to give palliative care to children.
One day, out of the blue, Margaret had a phone call from a final year architectural student who had a project to do and heard about that we wanted to build Bayt Abdullah. So Alia Al-Ghanim came to us and we had talks for whole weeks about the prospect of building a hospice. We also discussed pediatric palliative care, children with life-limiting and life-threatening conditions. We discussed the principles of pediatric care. We then spoke about how hospitals were a scary place, and to build a hospice, it has to be as colorful and as playful as a toy. We also discussed that some of our children that we met wanted to go and see Disneyland. So Alia Al-Ghanim put a Ferris wheel in the playground of Bayt Abdullah. Now the Ferris wheel we had some worries with. How do you build a Ferris wheel that is safe for children on wheelchairs? How do you build a Ferris wheel that will go in a small place like Bayt Abdullah in their playgrounds? The answer is go to the experts. So we went to the people who built the London Eye, and they built us a mini Ferris wheel. And also they built us a walkway to the rooftop, and they built us a magic carpet. So then we went and spoke to the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, KPC, and asked them if they would sponsor the three elements of the playground: the Ferris wheel, the walkway, and the magic carpet path. They sponsored it, and what do you think we called it? We called it KPC Land, not Disneyland.
And we talked about schooling. We talked about children wanting to continue their education but were unable to go to school. And we talked about a young boy, he was 15, who had osteosarcoma. And when he had his operation to amputate the arm, he woke up and he looked at his mother and he said, "Have I passed my exams?" That was his first thought. Have I passed my exams? And his mother said, yes, yes, you have. And so Alia included a school in the hospice design. And we talked about families wanting and reaching out for spiritual support, and so she included a small mosque. And we talked about inviting the community into Bayt Abdullah so that families wouldn't feel isolated and away from normal life. And so she designed a theatre. And we talked about families needing respite, a break from looking after their sick children or sick child and other children at home, and coming into Bayt Abdullah to have the support of all the hospice staff. And so she included 10 three-bedroom chalets for respite care, reminiscent of the chalets that we enjoy at the weekends in Kuwait. And then she considered all of the things that we discussed, and every element of the hospice, of the children's hospice, had a purpose. And that purpose was to meet the needs of the children and their families.
In January of 2012, 1,000 children again got together in a plot of land of 23,500 square meters to celebrate the opening of Bayt Abdullah, offering pediatric palliative care for children with life-limiting and life life-threatening conditions. Bayt Abdullah was a unique project. He said 2 minutes, I'll finish. And which is one of a kind in the whole world. We named it Bayt Abdullah in memory of this little boy who inspired us with his courage and fearlessness. The boy whose bravery and fearlessness and his love for life. So, why are we telling them all this?
Why? Because they should know. Because you should know, and you should support the right for every child with a life-limiting or life-threatening condition to have access to pediatric palliative care. From the UN Charter on Children's Rights of 1989 to the Rome Charter in November of 2015, we promise these children that they will be treated with respect and dignity, that they will have expert pain management and symptom control, and that they will be treated by clinicians who are trained in pediatrics within a facility that is designed for children and their families.
That facility in Kuwait is Bayt Abdullah Children's Hospice. Free of charge for any child resident in Kuwait, irrespective of his nationality or religion. Bayt Abdullah is a place for children to play, to live their lives as fully as possible and as long as possible together with their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you.